Oh, viewers, you probably thought this game didn't exist, did you? Well, let me tell you that as you wander through miles of uncharted caves in search of the legendary underground pyramid and its vast treasures, to complete your adventure, you're going to need to swing from ropes and ladders, run across unstable terrain and down ravines, operate elevators, mining carts, and rafts. You're going to collect keys, bombs, flares, jewels, sacks of gold coins, and other valuable items as you navigate this hazardous terrain. You're going to be doing all that in Spelunker. From IREM, good old IREM, released in September of 1987. Also available on the MSX, the Atari 400 and 800, arcades, Commodore 64, and is now available on the Virtual Console. Originally released in 1983, developed by Tim Martin and Micrographic Image, it's a platform game similar to Pitfall or The Curse of Ra. This was originally released by Micrographic Image for the Atari 8-bit in 1983. It was later ported to the Commodore 64 and re-released by Broderbund in 1984. European publishing rights licensed to Ariolasoft. That is an interesting word to wrap your mouth around. An arcade version followed in 1985, and the game was released for the NES on December 6, 1985. In Japan and North America in 1987. The MSX got a version in 1986. A sequel was also released for the NES in 1987 called Spelunker 2, Japanese words, in Japan only. The game was re-released for the Virtual Console in 2008. And there's a Wii U version now, as well as a 3DS version. How about that? Spelunker is set in a colossal cave, with the player starting at the cave's entrance at the top, and the objective is to get to the fabulous treasure at the bottom. To achieve this, you must walk and jump through increasingly challenging parts of the cave, all while working with a finite supply of fresh air, which has to be replenished at various points. Some of the hazards the player face include water, uneven terrain, steam vents, small ledges, chasms, deadly pits, large rocks that must be blown away, and one of the few enemies are large bats which randomly drop deadly guano on the player. Deadly. Additionally, a ghost haunts the cave, appearing randomly and attempting to take the player to the shadow world. But by pressing the spacebar or B button for the NES, we can send a blast from our air tank, or use a flash gun in the NES version, pushing the ghost away. However, this does render you immobile for a couple of seconds, thus vulnerable to other dangers. Objects to collect include dynamite, flares, and keys, which come in two different colors. By pressing the D key, a stick of dynamite is dropped and ignited. This can be used to blow away big rocks, though you must make sure you're not standing too close. Flares are launched with the F key and are used to scare bats away. After the flare is extinguished, the bats return. I believe that is down NB and up NB in the NES game. Much of the game's difficulty arises from the fact that the explorer cannot jump high or fall far, and therefore dies very, very easily. There's also no projectile motion when running off the edge of a cliff, so the character will fall straight down. As such, precise positioning and jumping play key factors in successfully completing the game. And additionally, certain versions of the game are very precise about jumping from ropes or ladders. The NES and MSX version require the player to move sideways before pressing the jump button, which means you risk walking off a ladder or rope. The Atari version and Commodore version allow the player to hold the button and tap the joystick instead to make a single jump. The splash screen of the game on the original Atari featured an excerpt of Modest Magursky's Pictures at an Exhibition as background music. All other versions of the game, including the Atari re-release, feature a different title theme, and the NES and MSX version had additional music during gameplay. The cave in Spelunker is divided into 6 levels, while the levels connect seamlessly to each other, forming one large map. The game clearly signals a level change at certain points by showing the name of the next level and giving the player a bonus, consisting of an extra life and a varying amount of points. In the NES version, upon completion of the last section, a second quest is begun. The second quest is another instance of the same maps with some changes. The color scheme is different, and door keys are now invisible, but thankfully in the same location. During the third quest, the keys remain invisible and require the player to jump at the proper position to collect the keys. Fourth and fifth quests accelerate various enemies and hazards, as well as requiring the player to fire a flare instead of jumping in order to collect the invisible keys. All quests after the fifth require the player to fire a flare immediately jump to collect the keys, as well as maintaining the accelerated enemies and hazards. There is a re-release and a remake of this. Sony Computer Entertainment of Japan released Spelunker HD for the PlayStation 3 as a downloadable game through their PSN store. It received the PlayStation Store's Best Sales Award from 2009. The game is a remake of the NES port with high-definition graphics and 100 levels, consisting of 10 large caves with 10 levels in each. And goodness gracious, is this a hard game. That's all I can really tell you. This game is not forgiving at all, but strangely fun.